Good evening, Crypt Keepers, and welcome to Cryptique, where we discuss all things paranormal, occult, UFOs, metaphysical, hidden history, forbidden archaeology, all things truther, and so much more. I'm joined, as always, by a man who's seen some unexplainable things and done some things he can't quite explain, but he knows what he's after. The truth. Ryan, what's up?
Not a whole lot. That actually sounds kind of real. You know, I've had a little bit of a crisis of faith lately.
Uh-oh.
I think, like, I believe that a lot of what we talk about, especially the stuff that we're making fun of, I think is bullshit. But it's like, it almost feels like leaning more into the stuff we don't buy into would be more fun than what we're doing, where we're actually, you know, when we go into some of these topics, we're invested in it, and it's like we really want to sell it. I don't know. I was watching some of these ghost shows, like Destination Fear and Zach Baggins. Like, Zach Baggins has like 10 different shows, but I was watching some of those, and it's like, it would be fun to just be there with them, like if they're actually on edge that much, and just screw with them. That would be like a dream. Like, win some contest where I get to go with them on like several different shoots. I would get kicked out after the first one, but just like hide just places. It's like, I've seen you investigate this 100 times. I don't think there's anything in this location, so I'm gonna hide in this closet and pop out at you later.
They've got their own people to do that, I'm sure. I mean, listen, I don't want to call anybody out, but you got to make a show. You know, it can't just be walking through a building in infrared. There's got to be something else, and it is what it is. There's a market for it, obviously.
That's true. That's why the original partner was supposedly left. Nick Groff, or whatever his name was. He supposedly left because they were trying to fake evidence. He was like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, good for him. And now he has probably nothing. He's been cast aside.
Well, he's done some other stuff, but yeah, he's not big like Zach or anything. And it's kind of funny, like Ghost Hunters, when that was first on, like, they debunked the vast majority of it. Like, almost every episode, I think people forget this. Like, almost every episode, they found nothing. Like, all the stuff that they found, they would, like, talk to a homeowner. They'd be like, this sound that you hear at night, that's caused by an ice machine. This is caused by, like, this floor vent blowing and this curtain moving and whatever. That's what makes that sound. And then when they would catch some piece of evidence, it was such a huge deal. Like, I remember an episode where there's like a lamp on this table, and they're reviewing all this footage from the whole day, and they eventually realize that this lamp has been slowly moving across this table over the course of like hours. So they didn't notice it at first until they noticed like the little runner cover thing on this table is bunched up. And they're like, how did this move? Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, it was like they would see like weird heat signatures. They get like, you would literally see like their jacket get tugged on. They're like, oh, that's so strange. And they're hardly reacting to it at all. And it's like, either this is like they just broke new ground and the ghosts are 100% real and they just proved it and they're somehow not stoked, or this is all fake now.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I see, you know, I've tried to befriend as many paranormal investigators and stuff like that as I can on Facebook, just because I want to be part of this community. I want to know, you know, get feedback on, oh, this is trending right now. This is what everybody's talking about. But if I see one more picture of like a wood grain floor that has a outline of what may possibly, if you squint and put different light on it and, you know, mess with the colors, it could look like a face. And it's like, what do you guys think about this? And it's like, you guys get new evidence every day. How do you get, and it's always, well, we were on a vacation. We were on, I look like I'm on a vacation. We were on an investigation last night and we got this photo, and it's like, dude, just stop. Please stop. This is the kind of stuff that makes no one pay attention. This is why people don't want to go on podcasts and stuff about some of this stuff, because of the, I think, okay, I've got a new term. All right, you ready? ready for this?
Ready.
We've got paranormal investigators, right? We're kind of paranormal investigators. I was a ghost hunter for a while. We get out in the field a little bit and do some stuff here and there. But then you've got pareidolia investigators. And they're the ones that every fucking leaf has a face in it. Every rock has an elf hiding behind it. Every tree has a Bigfoot peeking out from behind it. And it's like, stop. You guys are ruining this.
Right. And those are the ones that I call out that it bothers Kim. Where she'll just be like, I know it's fake. I don't know why it's fake. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to ruin it.
It makes it tough for people like us that are trying to get the truth out there, man. All right. Well, moving along, I guess, now that we've got that out of the way. I want to give a special thanks to Heather U333 for your kind review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate it. If you give us a review, comment, like, share, subscribe, we'll call your name out, right?
Totally.
All right. You want to tell them what they need to know?
Oh, if you guys want to tell us what you're into, what you believe in, who your favorite paranormal investigators are, you can do that at cryptiquepodcast@gmail.com. We always like to hear from you. We often will call it out when we hear from anybody, especially if it's interesting or entertaining. And if you want to see what we're selling or what we're making, you can do that at cryptiquepodcaststore.com. You can help us keep the microphones hot and the servers running at buymeacoffee.com/cryptiquepi. And as always, the best way to support us and interact is to interact with the show through whatever your platform is, and would be nice, and share it with somebody you know who's into this kind of stuff and might enjoy it too.
Positively, for sure. And Ryan's working on the website, so hopefully that'll be up within the next couple weeks here, and you guys can get it all in one place.
Yeah, we think
one-stop shopping, if you will.
Yeah, I think we've got the formatting, or I think I have the formatting pretty much set. Just
Sounds good
gotta
to me,
figure
man.
out exactly what we want our post to look like.
All right, well, we'll get on that. We're gonna work on that. We'll get that out to you guys here pretty soon. Ryan, would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first today?
I can go first.
All right, let her rip.
So this story is from your library, and it's about Michael Taylor, who was allegedly a murderer influenced by over 40 demons. Is that the way you'd put this to start?
Yeah, honestly, I kind of put this information together a long time ago and haven't really looked at it, but I looked at it a little bit last night before I sent it. And yeah, it's basically, he is claiming that these demons, caused him to do things he wouldn't normally do.
So in 1974, Michael Taylor was living a pretty idyllic life within Ossett, West Yorkshire, or Ossett, whatever the right way to say it is. The Taylor family's humble home resonated with the aura of tranquility. Michael, often described by neighbors as mild-mannered and generally kind, generally seemed to be a positive and enduring kind of person. It generally seems to have had a good outlook on life, just kind of get through stuff.
Regular guy.
Yeah. And despite occasional bouts of depression, I'm reluctant to use the word depression, might be just sadness. Sometimes people are just sad.
Mm-hmm.
And these stem back from an injury that kind of hurt his employment prospects. Michael remained a caring father and husband. So the Taylors lived in a town where religion was important. I think we think of this a lot with smaller towns, or, there are certain towns that I'm thinking of where the church really is the center of the whole thing, and especially back in the day. I'm not sure how much it was so in the 70s, but, church is a big part of your community.
Well, I would think there's kind of a Bible Belt or something similar in most countries where it's like, a certain region or, part of your country, even if it's a state or a province or a county, is all, based around one religion and kind of, I guess, stick to those codes, those morals, or they try or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
So, despite living in this area, the family was not particularly devout in terms of their faith. Even though they lived by a bunch of churches, they just weren't into it, which I can understand. But
sure.
Michael continued to have these episodes, these depressive episodes, and he eventually started attributing that to some kind of spiritual forces and joined a weekly prayer group or prayer meeting that was going on. The sessions were led by a woman named Marie Robinson, who exuded a kind of old-time religion vibe. She was, soft-spoken, just... I kind of understand what he means. I've seen, like, when I was a kid, our priest had a very... Like, the way he spoke, you just hung on those words, and that's kind of the feeling I'm getting from her. But initially, Michael kind of threw himself into the group and attended every meeting and every function that they had. And the pull of Marie's teachings brought him deeper, and eventually wound up having him witness exorcisms where demons or spirits were being cast out, and they're claiming this was the power of God doing this. Eventually,
that's really interesting. So he got to go see, like, how does that
I don't
happen?
know.
Like, I go to a church meeting and they're like, well, we've got to get some money for the Rotary Club to plant new daylilies out in front of the church. But this guy, he gets to go to exorcisms. Hey, you get a lot more people in church if you're like, hey, we're going to do an exorcism today. Y'all might want to get
your
here
popcorn.
early.
Yeah. Get your monster, whatever you're going to have. Well, I think it's because he's saying that he feels that he's being influenced by some kind of, spiritual power or presence that maybe they involved him in this kind of thing more. But yeah, it is a little
Sure.
odd. So he started having private meetings with Marie. During these encounters, they would sit across from each other, repetitively making the sign of the cross for extended periods and believing that this would counteract perceived malevolence of the full moon. So this sounds like, I don't know if it's like a call and response thing, like I do it and then you do it back, or we're just both like we're racing. I don't know. It sounds like a, what do you call it? Like obsessive compulsive. Like obsessive compulsive behavior.
Yeah, or
there's
like a mnemonic thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's like a pattern to it. There's something that you're doing and there's a reason that you're doing it. People who have OCD understand that they have it. They understand that what they're doing doesn't necessarily make sense, but something about it like scratches an itch in their brain where it's like, this makes me feel better about this other thing.
Well, I think that, for just in case, real quick, sign of the cross is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's you're crossing yourself, the sign of the Trinity, and it's generally considered Catholic. So I don't know. We didn't say if he was Protestant, Catholic, or anything yet.
No,
right?
we have not talked about a specific denomination, and I'm not sure if we know what his denomination is. Yeah.
I would assume that if they're making the sign of the cross and they're doing exorcisms, it's probably Catholic.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I don't see Joel Osteen going out and doing any exorcisms.
Yeah, it would mess up that nice electric blue carpet he's got if they started throwing a bile all over it.
Yeah, ruin one of his Lamborghinis.
All right, so yeah, these meetings became like a big part of his life and a big time suck on his life, really. There's a big time commitment.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the group couldn't help but notice this infatuation that he had with their spiritual leader, and it strained his home life as well. His absence just caused a lot of problems, sadness, just withdrawal, confrontation, all these, emotions that can come when the father is absent from his wife and kids.
Right.
His wife Christine.
So he's into cougars.
His wife Christine thought that this might be exacerbating his problems instead of making them better, and suspected that there might be a little something going on in these private sessions. And eventually she openly confronted him during one of these prayer meetings. In response, it seems that something in him just kind of snapped. He just suddenly changed. Standing abruptly, he directed his ire not at his wife, but at Marie, launching into a verbal and physical assault. The congregation intervened, restraining Michael as he continued to vocalize unintelligibly. Later, Marie would recount this episode. And Marie said, I suddenly glanced at Mike and his whole features changed. He looked almost bestial. He kept looking at me and there was a really wild look in his eyes. I started screaming at him out of fear. I started speaking in tongues. Mike also screamed at me in tongues. I was on the verge of death and I seemed to come to my senses. I knew that only the name of Jesus would save me and I just started saying over and over again, Jesus. When Christine heard me calling on the name of Jesus, she started saying it too, and I believe firmly that it was only by calling on his name that I was not killed. It seems overly dramatic, but we don't know exactly what happened there. But this sounds more about like a feeling that she had from looking at him, as opposed to like the physical attack.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can see, you know what I mean? Like we did the sleepwalking episode. When someone's sleepwalking, you can kind of tell they're not all there.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
It seems like
they look the same, but is it? So I mean, I think that a wife can probably, she's seen probably every emotion.
This is not the wife. This is Marie, the leader of these prayer sessions.
Oh,
it was Christine who joined in chanting the name Jesus. That I don't know if it snapped him out or whatever, but Michael later said that he had a complete lack of memory regarding this episode. At subsequent gatherings, he received absolution from Marie, who just kind of wanted to smooth over this whole thing and kind of put it behind them. Despite that, rumors about his outburst spread, and in the community, his reputation was pretty tarnished. Like you would expect that kind of thing to happen. The situation escalated when a local vicar, concerned about the perceived demonic possession, mobilized a group of ministers. So part of the church is actually kind of taking up the cause here and saying like, hey, wasn't this guy here because he thought he was being oppressed by something spiritual or demonic? Like, maybe he's right. Maybe that's what this was about.
Yeah.
So this group of ministers, led by this vicars, asserted that he needed an exorcism to free him from whatever it was that had been causing his depression and now these outbursts. So on October...
Yeah, because it can't hurt, right? Oh, wait. Yeah.
So on October 5th of 1974, Father Peter Vincent and Reverend Raymond Smith, accompanied by the prayer group, convened at St. Thomas's Church in Galber to perform this sacred rite. The exorcism unfolded over an intense 8-hour period, during which he exhibited violent reactions such as thrashing, convulsing, and spitting. All pretty standard stuff for exorcisms. The severity of his response necessitated him being physically restrained to the church floor. Also pretty typical. In their efforts to expel these perceived demons, the priests employed a crucifix and drenched Michael with copious amounts of holy water. I shouldn't laugh, but I'm imagining them like waterboarding him with holy water. Like, get out, demon.
Super soaker.
Were they around in the 70s? They were invented around the 70s, weren't they? Dude, I grew up in the best time. In like the early to mid 90s, they had those super soakers that were dangerous. Like they had to put warnings on them because like you could literally shoot somebody's eye out with one of them.
Or you could just fill them with lighter fluid and put a flame on the end of it.
Do not recommend anything like that. I was about to just say...
It will probably blow up in your hands.
It will probably blow up in your hands, and the lighter fluid will probably screw up all the seams and like waterproofing for the tanks. Anyway, I had a conversation with one of my professors in college about how to put like liquid nitrogen in a super soaker, and he's like, well, you'd have to replace the valves with this and the tanks with that. And he's like, wait, why am I talking about this with you? Get out of my office.
Yeah.
Okay, so by 8 a.m. on the 6th, so just the next morning, the priests, fatigued, just drained, stopped the exorcism and claimed to have expelled over 40 demons.
It's a lot.
So I wonder if there's like the climax of any movie that involves an exorcism is usually this like mass expulsion of energy from the person being exorcised.
Yeah.
And then the demon's gone, and then everybody kind of collapses, and it's like, oh my god, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you do that, and then you have to do that 39 more times. Like, it would just be, it's like too ridiculous for a movie. So they assured Michael that the process would resume at a later date, saying that 3 demons remained, representing murder, madness, and violence. I don't know why those are the 3 that are okay to stay there for a while, and it's like, go home with these 3 and come back later. But following this declaration, Michael and Christine were instructed to return home and prepare for the impending continuation of the exorcism. However, things took a turn. Just an hour and 45 minutes after the cessation of the exorcism, police patrolling the Taylors' neighborhood stumbled upon a horrifying scene. A naked, blood-covered man staggering through the streets. To their shock, this was none other than Michael Taylor. Hastening to his residence, the officers found a scene of confusion. Other police officers were already present, responding to calls from concerned neighbors who had heard disturbing noises emanating from the residence. An exiting criminal inspector waved off the approaching officer, but the inspector had this to say: "You don't want to see this one, son. I've seen nothing like it before, and I've seen a few. It's the wife. She's got no... He's ripped at her son. It's a right mess in there. There's not much of her left. You don't want to see it, eh?" After saying this, he doubled over and vomited in the yard. Upon entering the house, officers were met with what some could later call the worst crime scene they'd ever worked. Michael had brutally attacked Christine, removing her eyes and tongue before ripping her face off her skull. He then strangled the family dog. After the dog was done, he ripped out its eyes and tore it limb from limb, throwing them around the house. The house was covered floor to ceiling in blood. Michael, who was at that time receiving care in a nearby hospital, was arrested. He never provided a motive for this killing beyond "Released, I am released. It is done. The evil in her has been destroyed." That was his quote.
Yeah.
The question of whether Michael Taylor was genuinely possessed or grappling with a deteriorating mental state became a central focus of the subsequent legal proceedings. His defense vehemently rejected the notion of possession, instead placing responsibility on the prayer group and the priests who had conducted this exorcism, again, just an hour and 45 minutes before. According to his defense, the group's intense religious activities aggravated an already fragile psyche. In an effort to undermine the possession theory, Michael's defense characterized it as a case of neurotics feeding neurosis to a neurotic.
Yeah.
So basically, nuts running the nut house is probably a way of putting that.
Right.
This argument aimed to cast doubt on the supernatural explanation, suggesting that the religious fervor of the group and the exorcism itself contributed to this declining mental state. During the trial, his defense team presented a compelling case contending that his actions were a result of psychological distress rather than possession. The legal strategy succeeded, and he was ultimately acquitted by reason of insanity. Recognizing the severity of these health issues, though, the court ordered psychiatric care for Michael, a treatment plan that spanned 4 years. After receiving psychiatric intervention and care, Michael Taylor was deemed fit for release back into the public.
I don't know, man.
There should be, I don't know, maybe there should be a vote on things like that. But I don't think anybody would let him back into the community or into the public.
Yeah.
So yeah, this remains a perplexing blend of religious fervor, mental health problems, and I don't know, I think what I'm going to call legal gymnastics to try to get around.
That's a good.
To try to just weave to this touchdown of the insanity plea. They're just trying to get there as fast as they can, and they're bobbing and weaving and turning, and they just somehow made it.
A Hail Mary, if you will. It's so weird that I guess it worked, but it's weird to me that they didn't move forward and say, yes, he was possessed, because you have all these people that would,
Back it up
come out and be like, yeah,
for
he
sure.
was. He was possessed. He had 3 demons left in him, and one of them was murder. Now, I'm sure that was brought up.
I would assume there's probably no modern precedent for an acquittal based on possession, but there is based on insanity or whatever mental health problems.
Yeah.
So they probably looked at this to say, well, we've had this group egging him on, saying you have these things, saying you have what was it, murder, madness, and violence, like spirits or demons representing these sort of cardinal
characteristics.
Yeah, these things, these whatever the opposite of a virtue.
Yeah, they're like
that's what these are.
They're like, dude, we got greed, we got envy, we got sloth. We're just going to come back tomorrow for murder, madness, and mayhem or whatever. Like, you don't go to get your car fixed and they're like, well, the engine's shot, but we're going to, buff that dent out on the hood.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. If you don't get the part that really needs fixing, doesn't matter. Your car can sit there with the dent in it and the engine not working, or it can sit there without a dent and the engine not working. Either way, you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
So fix the engine. Don't leave murder, violence, and madness.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely that this religious group that he was buying into and spending all of his time with, they told him these things are in you. Like these sort of major sins are represented by spirits inside you right now. So anything you feel is an expression of that, maybe. So I don't know. I feel like that's a reasonable strategy for his defense to use. To say, look at what they kept putting on him. They kept saying, like, you have these influences, you have these things happening to you. Who knows what the psychological pressure of that is on top of what he was already dealing with, and this pushed him to do this stuff. But it's inhuman, the things that he did. I mean, there are stories of like chimps ripping people's faces off, right? There was that horrible story from like 25 years ago, but a human can do that. You could rip my face off if we got into a fight, but
physically,
you physically have the strength to do it, but you wouldn't, because that's horrifying and no human would think to do that.
Yeah.
Or almost no human would think to do that. I mean, you'd need somebody like Genghis Khan to think of that. Or to like strangle the dog and then rip the dog apart and just like use the limbs like glow sticks at a rave to like spray blood everywhere or whatever he was trying to achieve with that.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, man, because if it was, I strangled my wife, that could be one thing. But the things that he did were, like you said, unspeakable. And it does make sense that it would have to be a bout of madness, whether it be from possession or just regular mental illness, that would make somebody do something like this. You don't get into a fight with somebody at a bar and remove their eyes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not. And I mean, I guess, ladies, if you're out there and somebody's trying to, rape you or something like that, poke their eyes out if you can. But that's a really, really, really difficult thing.
Well, I doubt most people would even try to
do.
poke them out. They would just poke them like Three Stooges. Like just try to get them because that throws you off.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I wouldn't want him living next to me.
Yeah. To know that capacity is in somebody, that it's happened before. I mean, we talked about this with the sleepwalking. It's terrifying to imagine that this has happened before and might happen again, even if it truly is sleepwalking.
Yeah.
But to know that this guy can just snap and do this to somebody that he's supposed to love more than anyone else, and then his dog.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine who doesn't love their dog. Like, everybody I know who has dogs has such a good relationship with their dog. It's like, I mean, I know it's not his children or anything, but like, what would drive him to do that to the dog?
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to rip a limb off of a dog. like what that would be like. I mean, without getting into detail, it would seem like it would require a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of effort. And I just hope that, these two beautiful creatures were dead before any of
Yeah.
this other horrific stuff happened to them. But it is a possession. So, I mean, that's why we're covering it. It's,
And
if you had to put money on it, what would you say? Possession or mental illness?
I really think I might go possession.
I think I might too,
Because
man.
this is not, like I said, this is not like a thing that a human would do, even a very mentally ill one for the most part. I mean, even serial killers who do like really weird shit, it's like kind of experimental. They're like, I don't know, it's this is not like I want to see what happens or how they react to this.
Yeah.
Like that's a psycho who is trying to satisfy some curiosity or achieve something for themselves. This is more like just a level of savagery that people don't have anymore. Maybe 100,000 years ago in our evolutionary timeline we did, but we don't now.
Yeah. And just the fact that, you can say what you want. If you don't believe in God, you don't believe in a God, any God, whatever. But these people that carried this out were professionals, right? I mean, if we go and ask for a professional opinion from a doctor, that's one thing. But I mean, a priest, a vicar, a minister, they're all professionals too. And their professional opinion is that this guy was possessed. And with the violence involved, it's hard to argue that. And just the fact that nothing like that had ever been exhibited before. If this guy was getting in fights all the time, or this guy was, using meth or some kind of weird drug all the time or something like that, then I could see it. But it's hard for me to go from normal guy to dismembers dog by hand and murders his wife and cuts her eyes out. That seems demonic to me. So I'm going deep.
I mean,
possession.
We've talked about AI on this a lot. And then we use AI.
I don't blame AI for this.
We use AI in our workflow. So one of the things I will use AI for is when I'm researching, I will find different accounts and I'll compile my notes and things like that. And then every once in a while, I will run them through some program just to say, did I repeat myself anywhere here? Like, am I missing anything where I repeated something or contradicted something? I use it as basically like an advanced spell and grammar checker.
Sure.
Which I'm sure is probably now built into Office 365 if I wanted to give Microsoft more money and information. But the only reason I bring this up is when I put it into the AI I was using, I was like, okay, no, I don't see anything repeated. Like, here's the basic beats that you laid out.
Mm-hmm.
And when it got to the murders, it just said unspeakable violence towards his wife and dog. Like anything else, it kind of gave a little bit of detail. But it's just something interesting. Like, it's so bad a computer won't repeat it. Like, the computer's like, nope, you didn't make any mistakes. You didn't contradict yourself. You didn't do anything out of order. Also, I'm not even going to say this part.
Yeah. So, I guess we're both going possession on this one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think so. I mean, it's like, I would prefer to believe that it's possession than to believe a person can just do this.
That's a real good point. There's a lot of evil stuff out there, but this is about as bad as I've heard, I think. All right. Well, on that note, prepare to be amazed because we are going to go on a journey to a place I've never been before, but always wanted to go. Papua New Guinea. And we'll do that after a quick break. Welcome back, Crypt Keepers. All right, Ryan, you ready to get into the Ropen?
I'm ready, man.
Have you ever heard of the Ropen before now?
No, I actually haven't.
Awesome. Well, this will be a fun one, and we are going to go over some possibilities that we'll cover on a different episode, I think. So, the Ropen of Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea, or PNG, is a fascinating and unique country, Ryan. It's located between Australia and the Philippines. So it's got lush jungles like you see behind me and remote islands. And Papua New Guinea comprises the eastern half of New Guinea, the second largest island in the world. And then there's a bunch of small islands, obviously. So this country covers almost 180,000 square miles. It's got about almost 9 million people living there. And so do you want to know what that breaks down to?
Sure.
One person for every 50 square miles. That is isolated, brother.
That sounds kind of awesome.
Yeah.
As somebody who's a shooting enthusiast, I would love to be able to go out on my back porch and just shoot.
Yeah.
Whether that be a bow or a gun or something like that.
Cannon.
Kim and I were talking about moving a while ago. It's I would only move if we could find a place with enough land that I could set up a little range and be able to do whatever I wanted out there.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Definitely
So one person
come true.
But at the same time, I always feel more at home in big cities.
Sorry.
When we go, we'll go visit Kim's family, which is in northern Illinois, and then we'll go on to Chicago maybe for a couple days. And when we're in the little farm town of 2,000 people or whatever it is, I feel just weird, a little uncomfortable. And then just walking through downtown Chicago, I feel super at home.
It's a terrible thing, Ryan.
I don't know what it is. And I didn't grow up, I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in St. Louis County, so heavily populated, but
not acceptable. Odd. Get over Chicago, man.
Well, Chicago, Boston, Seattle, they're all, at least pre-pandemic, they were all fine.
All right. So getting back to this remote region, it's unexplored and diverse. And basically every expedition that goes there finds something new. I mean, it could be a new flower, new plant, new species of caterpillar. It's not always Bigfoot and Mokele and Bembe and stuff like that. But they find all kinds of new stuff there because it's unexplored. It really is Jurassic Park, right? So in these remote regions, there is an island, which I love, called Umboy Island. And the reason I love that is because when I was a kid, when my dad tried to get me to eat something, it would always be oh, have some sauerkraut. And he'd eat some.
And he
and
plays he's eating it. Boy.
And he'd say, boy.
Boy.
You're not faking me out, dude. I'm not trying cabbage. Sorry.
I'm on to you.
Yeah. So in any case, Umboy Island is steeped in local legend, and it has a strange flying creature known as the Ropen, Ropen, as you see behind me if you're watching this on YouTube. Now, a lot of people are going to say Ropen translates to demon flyer. Not true. Ropen is kind of a catch-all phrase, and it basically means bird. So it's not demon flyer. Sorry, that sounds great on other podcasts and stuff like that, but it's not true. So there have been cryptozoologists, explorers, and locals with tales of a creature resembling a pterosaur, a winged reptile thought to have gone extinct at least 65 million years ago. It's a long time. So what's a pterosaur? Pterosaurs were flying reptiles that lived during the Mesozoic era basically from about, and I love how it's about 228 million to 66 million years ago.
It's a little bit of a range.
Yeah. So when people think of, pterodactyls. I think that's probably the most famous pterosaur. You think of a bird kind of lizard with like bat-like wings with skin drawn over them, a big head crest, long tail, but they're not technically dinosaurs. Pterosaurs are different from dinosaurs, Ryan. Did you
No.
know that?
Well, I mean, I know there are differences. I don't know the specifics.
The pterosaurs basically were just flying dinosaurs. I just wanted to sound smart. So there's a distinct group of reptiles, and these membranous wings supported by an elongated fourth finger. So when you see a bat, you see their wings are their arms stretched out with skin between them. Same kind of deal here with the pterosaur. Now, they came in different sizes. There were some that were just had a few foot wingspan, and then there were giants like Quetzalcoatlus, which has a wingspan of over 30 feet. So we're talking small private aircraft size, right? Something like that. They had different lifestyles. Some of them were fish eaters. Some of them, the small ones may have fed on insects. There's a lot of talk about them scavenging. And so the pterosaurs were well adapted to flight. They had lightweight hollow bones. And they even think that some species may have had fur or a covering of primitive feathers. So do you get the picture of what we're...
Yeah, I get the image of it.
And if you're going to watch the video, we'll put some pictures up and some videos as well. So the Ropen. It's described as a large featherless flying creature with a wingspan ranging from 12 to 100 feet. 100
Is that
feet,
like from baby to adult, or is that just...
No, just different types. And there's two distinct types that we'll get into. But, I mean, let's be honest. If you're talking 100 foot, you're probably like seeing an airplane, right? I mean, that would not... evolutionary wise, that wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense for something to have 100-foot wingspan. What would it hunt? Like orcas? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it doesn't make sense.
Today it wouldn't make any sense.
Mm-mm.
I mean, even insects were supposedly huge back then.
Yeah, when there was a ton of oxygen.
Right. I think the Science Center here in St. Louis has like a prehistoric area set up where they have like the dioramas of the way things might have been back in the day. They've got like the...
They took
the
it out.
Did they take out the Tyrannosaurus?
They took it out, man.
Oh my God.
Back when we were kids, that was like amazing. They're like, oh, your parents are like, it's not real. Whatever you believe you're seeing, it's not a real dinosaur. And then, you go there and the thing's like, I don't know if you can see my hand or not, but it's like, rah, rah, rah. So it's like so old animatronics, but back
it was
then,
crazy as a kid, like 30 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, holy, like, I know it's not real. Because like you said, they tell you, like, don't worry, it's not real. But it's like, holy shit, this thing's 30 feet tall and it killed that other thing, like there's blood and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But they had a part where they had like, kind of like a diorama that you walk through. And it was like bugs and stuff like that. And it's like a centipede was like just massive.
3 foot long. And
it was like, some of the bugs were like the size of road cones.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Like a cockroach the size of this keyboard.
Yeah, and there may have been at some point a evolutionary reason for something to be that big 66 million years ago.
Right, 66 million years ago, there was probably enough big prey to support it, because even something eating bugs could be huge.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got 2 leathery bat-like wings and a long tail with a diamond-shaped tip. Some people describe the tail as being a couple feet, and one gentleman that we're going to talk about has described it as being up to 15 feet long, just the tail. So it had a head crest, it had dermal bumps, which are just like bumpy skin, and a tooth-filled beak and razor-sharp claws. It's believed to be nocturnal and exhibits a bioluminescent glow known as indava by the locals, meaning bird that flies at night and brings death. So, bioluminescent glow. It's pretty crazy. So, cryptozoologists suggest that the Ropen may be related to the Dimorphodon or Ramphorhynchus lineages, both of which were smaller pterosaurs, which, I mean, you knew that, so I don't even have to get the word right. But the Ropen is far larger than these extinct ancestors, and, that leads to speculation and just a lot of things that really aren't scientific, right? So, one of the earliest documented sightings of a creature like this occurred in 1944 when Dwayne Hodgkinson, a U.S. military serviceman, encountered a large bird-like creature near Finschhafen, Papua New Guinea. So that would be not a local name. Finschhafen sounds German. So he was walking through a forest clearing, and he described the clearing as being about like 100-foot circle, basically. So not real big, but it's big if you're going, jungle hopping in Papua New Guinea. It's probably a welcome sight to not be covered in a canopy. But he saw this creature. He said he heard something and thought it was like a pig or something, because you got to watch out for wild pigs are terrible. But he looked back and saw this Ropen. He said that it was about 25 feet. I guess he's saying the wingspan was about 25 feet. And it rose from the ground. It was running when it was taking off. And the flapping of the wings was like laying the brush down around him. That's how much force was being put down by this creature, that it was forcing the grass and the brush to move as it was flying away. Mm-hmm. And he said that it had about a 15-foot tail. And now this is a military guy. He was on the Monster Quest episode on the Ropen, and he's 100% sure. He would be obviously quite a bit older today than he was on the Monster Quest episode, but he was 100% lucid and 100% sure, I guess. So now, going back, there is a 1595 sea chart that, they used to have the sea monsters on there, like, oh, there's mermaids here and there's squid here and blah, 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 blah. But this one was different because it had flying creatures with long necks, head crests, ribbed wings, and fantastical tails. So that's interesting. In the 1930s, biologist and entomologist Lucy Evelyn Cheeseman was exploring PNG, and she observed mysterious lights in the sky, which she noted in her book, The Two Roads of Papua. Papua. I hear it so many ways. It's fun to say. Wow. So these glowing phenomena, which lasted about 4 to 5 seconds, intrigued her, leading her to dismiss the idea that they were of human origin. Ryan, what animals do we know of that have bioluminescence?
Bioluminescent animals, algae. There's certain algae that's bioluminescent. I think certain jellyfish are bioluminescent. It's mostly like deep sea creatures, I believe, that tend to be bioluminescent.
Yeah, it's squid, octopus, like you said, deep sea creatures,
anglerfish, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something that we see in any mammal that I'm aware of. And I don't think that it's even been observed in like reptiles. I mean, I guess there's a possibility an amphibian could have some bioluminescence. They're kind of weird, but it's not something that we see basically outside of the ocean, for the most part.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Maybe a platypus. They're basically made from like extra parts from the parts bin.
They could have
Anyway,
anything.
so yeah,
You could
they
you
like
could tell me anything about a platypus, and I'd be like, really? I had no idea. Oh, it's got venom? Fuck.
like
Everything in
a
Australia has
right there.
venom. But
Yeah.
so anyway, that's what kind of sets this apart from like thunderbirds and other creatures that we'll talk about a little bit. Now, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So the tales of the Ropen and other similar creatures have drawn the attention, obviously, of us, cryptozoologists to a certain extent, and explorers. Jonathan Whitcomb, a cryptozoologist who spent over 10,000 hours investigating the Ropen, conducted an expedition to Umboy Island 20 years ago. Now, he didn't
It's
get
so
any
good.
video. What's that?
That name is just not getting old.
The
Boy
Ropen?
Island.
Oh, Umboy.
Oh
Okay.
boy.
So Mr. Whitcomb did not get any video evidence, but he interviewed locals who had seen the Ropen. Based on these accounts, he concluded that it may be a single giant pterosaur that inhabits the island. And when you say a single animal, that doesn't ring true for me, because how can it be? How can it be that there's only one unless there were two and the parents died? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Where does just one come from?
Right. And I've run into that with Bigfoot. I've talked to people about Bigfoot, and they're like, "Do you think he's real?" And I'm like, I think that Sasquatch are a real species of ape. And they're like, you mean there's more than one? I'm like, well, if there's not more than one, it's not an animal. It's like a ghost or something, a spirit, right?
Or it's like the Montauk Monster. It's like an experiment that got out.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But there's no way with Bigfoot that there'd be just one. Too many sightings, too many various descriptions.
Yeah.
I just feel like in almost any situation, unless it's like hyper localized, you're not seeing just one creature.
Right. 100%. So another gentleman, Paul Nation, led several expeditions to Papua New Guinea to study the Ropen. So we're not talking about something that's just being witnessed by locals, which honestly, I give locals way more credit than some dude that goes in there for a week, right?
Sure.
I mean, we don't know if these things are real. They could migrate and they could not be in that area for that week. You know what I mean? It's just, it's hard. It's a hard thing to tackle. It's a rugged terrain to get to. There's tribes that are not real friendly. You know, there's just a lot of problems in trying to explore a place like this, which is why it's able to maintain this biodiversity. You know what I mean? There's not roads everywhere. There's not, oil fields everywhere. There's not strip mines everywhere. It's wilderness. And hopefully it stays that way. But in 2006, he photographed a yellowish glow that moved across the sky near a volcanic peak. Computer enhancement of his footage suggested the light was not man-made. So the way this works, there was a video specialist is how he was described. And I was like, kind of, like, okay, a specialist, whatever. But he showed how he used computer footage or the video footage he analyzed with a computer to show that this glow was not body heat. So this glow was cold in the middle and then hot around the outside. Does that make sense? Just picture that you're kind of looking at like a ball of light, and then it's black in the middle because there's no heat there. So that's interesting. In 2015, Milt Marcy and Peter Beach led an expedition to, you want to say it?
Boy.
They interviewed locals and captured video of a large flying creature resembling a pterosaur or frigate bird. Frigate birds have a really kind of an odd looking wing shape that gets really pointy on the outside. And I could see how some of the sightings could be frigate birds, but their tails are like swallowtails. So they're like a big V. It is not a long tail that hangs off the back like what's being described with the Ropen. So they were unable to, I guess, accurately estimate the distance of these lights, which is a problem. So obviously this was at night, but you can't tell if how far something away is, you can't tell how big it is. Period. Right? You have to know distance to figure size or size to figure distance. You can't have two empty variables and get a mathematical answer out of it. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and a good example would be like looking up in the night sky and seeing lights. Could be a drone. Could be a drone like 300 feet up, or it could be a plane or a helicopter 1,000 feet up. You wouldn't know without knowing what the distance was.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about some kind of related things here. So the Congamato of Africa. So reports from various regions in Africa, including Zambia and Angola, describe encounters with a flying creature resembling a pterosaur, known locally as the Congamato. It's said to have a wingspan of 4 to 7 feet and a long-toothed beak. Witnesses describe it as aggressive and capable of attacking humans and livestock. So the Van Meter Visitor of Iowa. In 1903, residents of Van Meter, Iowa, reported sightings of a strange winged creature with a horn on its head and a glowing light on its forehead. Witnesses, included respected members of the community, claimed to have seen the creature flying over buildings and emitting a foul odor. The sightings occurred over the course of several nights, causing fear and fascination amongst the town people. So, possible related creature. Then we have the Texas pterosaur sightings. And it's worth noting that Texas is like pterosaur heaven. So they find all kinds of fossils and stuff like that. So numerous reports emerged from various parts of Texas describing encounters with large flying creatures resembling pterosaurs. Witnesses describe creatures with wingspans from 10 to 20 feet, sometimes with long tails and distinctive head crests. Sightings have occurred in both rural and urban areas, often leading to speculation and debate amongst locals and cryptozoologists. And there are some photographs of some of these creatures, which Ryan will put on this video. So let's talk a little bit about the lights. The Ropen's bioluminescent glow has captivated researchers and adventurers. During that 2004 expedition, we talked about the yellowish glow, and that was near Mount Tolu. So the sightings lasted only a few seconds, but it left a lasting impression on the team, and local artifacts provide further intrigue. There's a carving by an unknown artisan that depicts a medicine man with a reptilian creature on his neck and shoulders, exhibiting traits similar to the Ropen, including a reptilian head, elongated neck, and scaly membrane wings. So this is something that goes back in their local history. So if something like this were to still be occurring, PNG is a great place for it. One of the expeditions, they found what they thought was a Ropen nest. Now the locals say they live in caves, but they found this nest. And when you think of a bird nest, think of like an eagle nest, or wherever you're at in the world, whatever a big raptor is that is in your area. We're thinking like for eagle nests, they can be up to like 10 feet, right? But they're just like a regular bird nest. They're open on the top. But they say that these Ropen make nests that are more like a sphere with a little opening that they can just squeeze into, and they stay in there almost all the time. They only come out to hunt and presumably to mate if there's a breeding population of them. So it's a little bit different, but what else would have made that nest? You know what I mean? It's not like, one of the owls in the area was like, you know what? I just want a roof over my head. I'm going to start building a nest with a roof. So
Yeah.
it's really odd. But in any case, the locals also think that they describe it as coming from the stone. And I think what they're kind of getting at is that this is a spiritual creature. Like it comes from the stone. It's not necessarily like we would think of an animal that bleeds and dies
Hmm.
and mates and eats and poops and stuff like that. Not to be gross, but we can learn a lot from scat.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, there's people that have never set foot in New Guinea that say this is impossible. Impossible, Ryan. Have you been there? No? Shut the fuck up. So, especially when we're talking about Papua New Guinea, right? We're not
Hmm.
talking about the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We're not talking about, New York City. We're talking about places where no white man has ever been, period. So, these researchers also think that there's a lot of people that may have seen a creature like this that just haven't said anything because they don't want to be ostracized, said they're crazy, stuff like that, stuff that we embrace. So, uh, so Jonathan Whitcomb's work, published in Creation Research Science Quarterly, was met with skepticism and criticism, especially from the scientific community. Ryan, this is a thing that I just found out about. Have you ever heard of the Creation Research Science? I mean, this is their magazine, obviously, but there is a group of Christian researchers with quotation marks around it that are 100% dedicated to proving that dinosaurs still roam the earth today. And they are committed to that because they believe that if we find a living dinosaur, aside from alligators and turtles and stuff like that, if we find a living dinosaur, it proves that the earth is not 250 billion years old, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter because it's impossible to imagine 285 million years or whatever. You seem like you might want to chime in. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, no, I was just thinking about that they what is it, biblically they think the earth's like 5,000 years old,
I
maybe
think it's 10,000, but
10,000.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Or less than 10,000, they say.
yeah.
Got to keep it open. But
Yeah, the
yes.
only knowledge I have, I don't know about this group in particular, but this sort of set of beliefs
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of through a book written by A.J. Jacobs. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even remember the book. Oh, no, I know what it was. It was called My Year of Living, or The Year of Living Biblically. Because he has these weird books where he'll write about, like, I'm going to do this for a year. I'm going to read, like, the encyclopedia in a year. That was one of his first ones. He did one called Drop Dead Healthy, where he tried to follow, like, all of the health recommendations and then talked about, like, how some of that stuff fucked him up or didn't or whatever. But he had one where he went through living biblically, like the stuff that you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. He
Mm-hmm.
talked about, like, the Bible says you have to pay all your debts, like, in cash by the end of the day, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So he talked about his babysitter. Like, him and his wife had some kind of nanny that would come by and who would, like, try to like duck out on him as they came home because she did not want to be paid in cash. She wanted to be paid by check, so it would go on her taxes and all that stuff.
Weird.
But one of the passages he wrote about was going to a place where they had, like, dioramas set up like the science center, but it showed, like, humans and modern animals and dinosaurs coexisting because God created all of that
Mm-hmm.
whole
At the same
cloth
time.
10,000 years ago. Yeah.
Well, we do see, and we may end up doing a show on this, but we see, gosh, I want to say it seems like all the good stuff happens in Chile and Peru, but they have, it may have been Mexico too. I don't know. I feel bad not knowing, but they have found stones where there's carvings of like people riding a triceratops. You know what I mean? Like it's carved into the stone. And there's people that say, no, this is modern. This is not, stuff that was done 500 years ago by the locals or natives or whatever. But this group is interesting. This
Yeah.
group has done several expeditions to, oh gosh, I don't know where exactly, but they're looking for Mokele and Bembe, which is essentially a small brontosaurus sauropod type dinosaur that's believed to be living in some of the rivers in Africa. And I'm thinking to myself, like, could I get in on one of those expeditions? like,
Yeah.
hey, I'll go look for Mokele and Bembe with you guys. Yeah, trust me, we'll figure it out. But it's very interesting to me, and I don't like. It's not scientific because if it's scientific, you say we're going to figure this out. You don't say we're going to prove this by this because of this for this reason. You say we're going to get all the information we can. We're going to consume everything and then figure out what it is. So I don't like that someone would go into an expedition trying to prove something. I don't know. It seems a little disingenuous, I guess, but I would love to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's
So
not generally good for your research to have your conclusion already
right, yeah,
and look for evidence to, I mean, it's called confirmation bias,
yeah,
to try to just look for the things that confirm what you've already done. But it would be interesting. Like I've read these articles about like these different groups who send up like rockets or they do these different experiments to try to prove that the earth is flat, and their research usually comes away showing pretty conclusively that it's not.
See, I haven't seen any of that.
And
I have.
it's, I don't know, it's, I've seen a couple articles about it or a couple interviews where it's like, well, you sent this rocket up like however many thousands of feet, like what did it look like? And it's like, well, it looks round. We're gonna have to try to figure out why that is.
I have never seen a picture like that. Everything that I've seen of the Earth is in a fisheye lens, or it's an image, not a photograph. There's a difference. But
Mm.
moving on, we can
Yeah,
tackle
isn't
that
it
on
that we've
another
never
episode.
seen, there's never been a picture of the full Earth the way we think of it? I think we talked about this before. Like,
All right, well let's move on. There's not a whole lot left to get in here. Uh so some people think that it's a misidentified large bat, and they do have big fruit bats there, but I mean, come on, let's give the locals some credit. I mean, they harvest these bats, and I don't think they eat them. I think they might use them for ceremonies, stuff like that. But you can't tell somebody who's held a flying fox in their hands that that's what they saw. You know what I mean? I have, if someone uh, came to me and said, "Oh no, you just saw a dog," I'd be like, "I've seen a million dogs, dude. It does not look like a dog. It was not a dog. It may have been some kind of canine, but it wasn't a dog." And it would be insulting. It's like, it's insulting enough when people go in and they're like, "Well, we're going to figure this out. You guys just don't know what you're talking about." But then when they start saying, like, "Oh, you're just seeing a bat." What? These people live with these bats. They live in this nature. They have seen all this stuff. Some 40-year-old hunter that's been hunting since he was 6 years old with weapons that he created out of the forest in which these things dwell. You can't tell him, no, you're just seeing a bat. Come on, man. You can do better. Um, but I do have a couple possibilities. And it could be obviously some of these sightings could be other animals. We're not saying that every single Ropen sighting is authentic and legitimate. So there are hornbills, kind of look like that a little bit, 3-foot wingspan. And I don't think that you're seeing something with a 3-foot wingspan from half a mile away and thinking that it's 30 feet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You got the black flying fox, 5-foot wingspan. So now we talked about algae having bioluminescent qualities, right? And I didn't know this until recently. But what if this bioluminescence that we are told is displayed in these creatures, what if it's them skimming? You've been to Florida. You've seen the birds, how they skim the waves and they'll snatch a fish out or something like that. Maybe they get a beak full of this algae and, fly away, and you're seeing the algae flash, and then it goes into, like, while it's in its beak, and then it goes to its stomach, and it you can't see it anymore. It could be that it's, grabbing some sort of sea creature that has this bioluminescence. Or it could be a living dinosaur, Ryan. It could be. I don't know what else, and I don't have any idea how to explain the bioluminescence. I just don't know what else it could be, but I also don't know what would be the benefit of a creature like this having bioluminescence. And some people say that it lasts for like 4 seconds or 5 seconds, and then it disappears for 5 or 6 seconds and then comes back. And some people say that sounds like, lights on an airplane. The ones that we've seen, the videos that we've seen, they don't have the other lights that a plane would have. So could it be that you're seeing a plane that has some lights that aren't working properly? Man, I hope not, because that would suck to think that there's planes out there flying around that are they just are dark, just flying through the darkness. But some people say that it uses it when it gets close, because they think it's mostly nocturnal. It gets close to a tree or a place where it's going to perch, and it lights the area up so it can see it better. Or that the bioluminescence could be something to confuse its prey or stun it. But it's always told as this creature flying across the sky with this bioluminescence, not like swooping down and catching something, like confusing prey or anything like that. So it's hard for me to know what the purpose of this could be. It could be, some communication method between Ropen, I guess. But I don't know. I can't really think of a good reason why a flying reptile would have bioluminescence.
No, I can't imagine it would either. It would be probably a disadvantage to it, especially if it's a predator, which would have to be at that size.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, if this exists, it's probably on Umboy Island, baby. That's all I got.
Boy.
I think it's real. I don't know that it's a living dinosaur, but I believe that there's some unknown flying creature in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't think it's 100-foot wingspan, but I could believe 15 feet.
Yeah.
And we see giants too. It could be something where, and we don't see it a lot in the animal kingdom, but it could be something where, this bird that lives for, 15, 20 years had this, problem with its thyroid or something like that. And it grew to this enormous size. And it was just one that a bunch of people saw over the course of, 15, 20 years, its lifespan, whatever. And then most of them are actually quite a bit smaller, 3 or 4 feet, maybe 5, 6, 7 feet, but not 30, and certainly not 100. I mean, 100 feet would block out the sun if it flew over you. I mean, that would be horrifying. I've seen videos of planes where people are like on these islands, and they have these crappy runways, and people will go set a camera up because they know that a plane's not going to be able to take off on this runway or land
Yeah.
on this runway, and it buzzes the camera, and it's like, oh my God, that would be terrifying. And if it's 100 foot, I, it, do you know off the top of your head about what like a 757 wingspan would be? I know it's more than 100 feet, but it's not like 500 feet. You know what I mean? I'm thinking maybe 200, 230.
Wingspan 125.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about,
But the 757 is a narrow body plane. I think the 777's 212 feet across its wingspan. That's huge.
yeah, how could you hide that?
I mean, yeah, like I'm saying the 757's a narrow body, but that's I mean, if you look at like Bombardier 104 or Bombardier, however you want to pronounce it, the 7500 has a wingspan of 104. That's a plane I've ridden on a bunch of times. It holds, I don't know, 20, 30 passengers,
It's a
something
big
like
thing.
that.
You're not going to mistake it. I mean, dude, if somebody flew over you with an ultralight and they were 50 feet away, it's not like you're going to be like, was that a bat? It's, I don't know. There's a lot of smoke here, and I do believe that there's a lot of things that we haven't discussed. In fact, I know there's a lot of things in Papua New Guinea that have not been discovered, and this could be one of them. And
Yeah.
like I said, I don't think it's 100 feet, but I believe there's something out there, Ryan. I believe there's something out there.
Yeah. I believe there's an unidentified creature, and your idea of like it's skimming the surface of the water. I've seen that here in my backyard, this little cove that comes into my backyard. I've seen like cranes and things swoop down and end up with like a little, algae or seaweed or whatever the stuff is in its beak.
Mhm.
That like spits out when it goes to eat whatever it is it actually caught.
So
That kind of
there
makes
you go.
sense, and that could account for some of that probably. Like some of the
Absolutely.
stories of bioluminescence, at least.
So we haven't really solved any mysteries today, guys. I'm sorry, but the Ropen it's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
I believe that at one point it may have even fought Godzilla. So there's that. But I
And I
guess
do want to
that's
point out there have been images taken of the Earth
oh,
from lunar orbit, both
allegedly.
by probes and by
Well, did you say
Apollo
photos?
astronauts. Photos.
All right.
There
Send me
were
those
raster
photos.
images taken by probes in the mid 60s, and images taken, the most famous one being Earthrise, taken on December 24th, 1968, by Apollo 8 astronaut William Anders, using a modified Hasselblad 500 EL, which I would love to have like a 500C. That'd be amazing, but I'm too cheap to buy myself a toy like that. It'd be stupid. Let me get a 60-year-old medium format camera that's super expensive to buy, super expensive to maintain, super expensive to use. Anyway, he took it on 70 millimeter film, which was a modified Ektachrome with a 250 millimeter lens, which on a medium format camera like that would probably be the equivalent of like an 80 millimeter lens, like a portrait lens on a modern DSLR.
Now you're just flexing.
I'm just putting it out there for people.
Now,
But yeah, I do remember one of the big explanations of like, or points of evidence about the Earth was that most images that we have are not that. They are not somebody on the moon or in an orbiter or whatever, lander, taking a picture. It's satellites passing over and taking these repeated photos, and then they're stitched together, similar to how like you take your phone and you do a panorama, and it's taking like 10 pictures and stitching them together.
mm-hmm.
So it's like the original iPhone's wallpaper, I think. There was the Earth like perfectly lit, not a real photo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
I wish we
I
could
just
go
wanted to throw
back
that
to
out there,
the.
because somebody might send us angry emails.
I just wish we could go back to the moon. I don't know why they got rid of that technology and can't do it anymore. So weird. So weird.
It's very disappointing. It's really
Oh, yeah.
disappointing to me to have like abandoned space. And
We
when
have
I
not
was
abandoned
reading,
space. We're going, dude. They're talking about putting a fucking light rail system on the moon. We want to put a rail system on the moon. All we need is every single penny everyone makes. We need it
Yeah.
all because we are still Nazis at heart.
Yeah,
All
that's a
right,
good
let's
point.
wrap this up. We can do this. We need to have Dave back on now that we've got a video show. He's got a lot of stuff to present. But in any case, I'm sure you guys don't want to hear our back and forth on that right now, because now it's time for Ryan to tell you what you need to know.
Yeah, you guys always know the drill. But I'll just be simple. Interact with the show however you want. It all helps us out, especially helps us with the algorithm if you do it through your podcast platform. But if you want to tell us what you think about the Earth being flat, or photos taken of it, or why we did or didn't go back to the moon. I mean, we landed on the moon in the 60s, man.
Allegedly.
Why did we stop? Like, Star Trek projected that we would continue to do that shit, and we'd probably be colonizing the solar system by this time. But a big part of Elon Musk's biography with his SpaceX stuff was like, we kind of stopped. Because it kind of became like a money grab for a lot of companies. Like, oh, well, we're the only ones making this stuff for space exploration. We can charge as much as we want. And it's going to make it so expensive, we're just not going to do it anymore. Basically, like as a species. We're just going to be like, nah, we're cool here on Earth. This is all we need. Anyway, going back to it, we do have the website on the way. We've got a little bit more work to do on that and some kind of standardization for our posts. But if you want to see what products we're cooking up, you can do that at cryptiquepodcaststore.com. You can email us at cryptiquepodcast@gmail.com. And you can help us with a little donation at buymeacoffee.com/cryptiquepi.
And remember, the mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it's not open. That's Frank Zappa for you. But that's a great quote, right? One of the best ever.
That is a good quote.
All right.
That's great. I never
We'll
heard
be
that.
back soon. We have Taylor Keene coming on. And this gentleman wrote a book called... Well, let me just grab it here. Well, let's see if you can see that. Rediscovering Turtle Island. And he's going to be on the show to talk to us about the truth about Cahokia Mounds and so much more. That's coming up. We have hopefully a gentleman from the University of Missouri coming on to discuss the Congolero of Papua New Guinea. All right. So,
Good deal.
and let us know what you want to hear. We've got some exorcism cases kind of on the bookshelf right now. And let us know if you're liking kind of what we're doing right now. We're doing the split shows, almost like a Destination Truth style, and we're not getting too deep into stuff, but covering a lot of fun topics. Good evening, Crypt Keepers.